The federal and Ontario governments announced plans to build a large-scale electric vehicle battery plant in Windsor. Huge news this week. The largest investment in Canadian automotive manufacturing history. The biggest private sector investment in Ontario as well. But yes, there is federal and provincial money here. The Ontario Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, Vic Fedeli, joins us. Good morning. Thanks for joining us, Minister.
Good morning, Bob. Great to be here. Thank you.
This is a big deal, but also an important deal to catch up in this huge pivot to electric vehicles and billions of dollars being spent, and the province really needs to be a player in this, doesn't it?
Well, we've been working for quite a few years on the entire, we call it driving prosperity, and we began with announcements from Ford in Oakville about 18 months ago with $1.8 billion, and then we've heard from General Motors at $2.8 billion, Stellantis at $1.5 billion, Honda last week at $1.4 billion,
right.
Dofasco with Green Steel in Hamilton, where we made a $500 million investment. And with this battery plant, we are now at $13 billion in investment in Ontario, new investment in the auto sector in Ontario in 18 months.
Now, this should help, I mean, on many fronts, and of course it adds a lot of jobs, but also there's been a lot of supply chain issues, of course, and specific to the auto industry, and there's a lot of resources right in Ontario that can take advantage of this.
Bob, you know, I'm a North Bay boy, born and raised, and for the first time in the history of auto, for 120 years, this is the first time Northern Ontario will be included in the auto sector because of the critical minerals, lithium in the Northwest, cobalt processing in the town of Cobalt, certainly nickel, class 1 nickel from Sudbury, and other great nickel finds. So the Premier and I were in Thunder Bay last week launching critical minerals, our strategy on how we're going to supply all of these facilities.
And is that going to help prices eventually?
Well, demand will. You've got multi-billion-dollar companies making multi-billion-dollar investments. And so our job as the province of Ontario is to make sure that we are supporting these manufacturers because that's where the jobs are. So we're supporting the 100,000 manufacturers by helping to fund the vehicle makers, the 5 vehicle makers, the battery maker, all of the parts, tool, die, and mold makers, all of the connected and autonomous people, the tech side of your car, the steel, the green steel that is now going to be made from Hamilton, not with coal, but with electric arc furnace energy, and then now the critical minerals. So we're end to end, literally with all our chips in on the table to support the workers.
Now, you recently just came back from Washington, D.C. with the Premier because there's big concern about Buy American policies, and there's a lot of that concern within the automotive sector. Is there any encouraging movement? Because there was all that talk about increasing rebates in the U.S. for American-built electric vehicles.
A couple of things on that, Bob. Certainly, when you see a $5 billion announcement by multinationals in the province of Ontario, it kind of puts an exclamation mark on, yeah, we got this, this is where we need to be. But it was really important to be in Washington to hint at this big investment that's coming, but to remind them of the $8 billion that we already received this year in investment, that the multinationals understand that, yes, you may have these once in 100-year, or in this case, 200-year disruption. But we put on Monday also legislation, very narrowly targeted legislation on essential transportation routes that will look after this. We're going to have our own fleet of tow trucks. We're going to be prepared for the next 200 years.
Okay, and more deals. We're running out of time here, but more deals to come specific to EV investment?
Stand by. We've got stand by the next few days and weeks, Bob. We've got many more deals to be announced before long.
Well, then you stay close because we'll be back to you. Thanks so much for joining us. Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, Vic Fedeli. Thanks for your time this morning.